Cop hits black veteran and puts him in a coma, unaware of who his son is. Rain slid down the windshield like 1,000 thin lines, and the old wipers moved back and forth with a soft squeak. Harold Brooks drove slowly because he knew the road well and because he never liked to rush in the rain. He was in his late 60s, a quiet Army veteran who had learned long ago that haste rarely helps. He had just left the community center where he helped younger veterans fill out forms and talk about jobs. He always stayed a little late to stack chairs, clean the coffee pot, and check the door locks twice. People called him Mr. Brooks, but he told them to use his first name. Still, they did not. They respected him, and he respected them. The street lights made long, shining pools on the road. In the passenger seat, a paper bag held a piece of lemon cake wrapped in wax paper by a church friend who insisted he take it home to his wife, Lila. He thought about her, about the way she would smile and say he was late again, and how they would share the cake at the kitchen table with warm milk. He was tired, but it was the good kind of tired, the kind that follows a day of useful work. A red and blue flash filled his mirror. Harold looked down at his speed and then up again. He signaled and pulled over to the right, careful and steady. He did not feel worried. He had done nothing wrong, as far as he knew. Maybe a tail light had gone out. He turned off the engine and placed both hands on the steering wheel so they were easy to see. He had taught younger men to do the same thing, to be calm, to make every move slow and clear. The patrol car stopped behind him. Rain ticked on both roofs, and the sound of passing tires hissed like a stream. Officer Evan Pike stepped out into the wet night. He was in his late 20s, not long on night shift duty, and his jaw was tight. Earlier calls had been messy, and the weather had not helped. He pulled his jacket close and walked up to the driver's side. His flashlight beam swept the inside of the car, landing on Harold's hands, the dashboard, the old fabric seats, and the paper bag with the lemon cake. "Good evening, sir," Evan said, voice firm over the rain. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Harold turned his head slowly. He spoke with a measured rhythm because of a small speech issue from an old service injury, and he did not like to rush words. "Evening, officer," he said. "No, I do not." "Your left tail light is out," Evan said. "License and registration, please." "Yes, sir," Harold answered. He kept his hands where they were for a moment, as he had taught others to do, and then said, "I am going to reach for my wallet. It is in my back pocket. My registration is in the glove box." Evan stood a little too close, rain dripping from the brim of his cap. The shoulder radio crackled with distant chatter from another call. He felt the noise pressing in. He wanted this stop to be quick, correct, and closed. "Keep your hands visible," he said. "Then slowly get your license." Harold nodded. His right shoulder was stiff, and it made simple movements slower. He lifted his left hand from the wheel, kept it open, and reached across his body to his back pocket. The fabric pulled. The motion was careful, but it was not fast enough for Evan's tense mind. Evan's grip shifted on his flashlight. "Hands where I can see them," he said again, a little louder this time. Harold paused, his hand halfway to the wallet. "Yes, sir," he said, and put both hands back on the wheel. "My shoulder is a little slow. I will move again if you are ready." Evan took a breath. He knew the script from training, but the night made the words feel thin. "Okay," he said, "go ahead." Slowly. Harold reached again. The wallet was tight in the pocket, and he had to work it free with his fingertips. The move took longer than it should have. Evan's radio spat another burst of sound. A car passed close to the shoulder, splashing water. Evan shifted his weight and raised the beam of the flashlight, which made the shadows inside the car jump. For a heartbeat, he lost sight of Harold's hands. Fear, small but sharp, rushed in. He had been told about the dangerous traffic stops, the quick hands, the sudden moves. He did not want to make a mistake, yet his body felt like it was ahead of his thoughts. "I said hands," he barked, voice rising. Harold froze, wallet now halfway out, his fingers on the edge. His eyes met the beam of the light, and he blinked. "Officer, I am only getting my out of the car," Evan said. "Right now. Step out. Hands where I can see them." Harold obeyed. He pushed the door open and stepped into the rain, palm up, fingers spread. He was steady but slow, and the wet curb made the ground a bit slick. The cold air touched his face. He kept his eyes on Evan's shoulder, where the light and radio sat, because he had learned not to stare at a person's eyes in tense moments. It can feel like a challenge. He had taught that too, back at the community center. "Turn around," Evan said. "Hands on the roof." Harold turned. The rain soaked his jacket in seconds. He placed his hands on the wet metal and felt the smooth, cold surface under his palms. He tried to speak with calm. "Officer, my license is in my wallet. It is right here. I will not move without your word." Another burst of radio noise. Evan's pulse ticked faster. He wanted backup, but it was busy on another call, and the delay scratched at his nerves. He told himself to follow steps. He told himself to watch the hands. He told himself a lot of things, but under all of it, he felt the pressure to act. "Take one hand off the roof," Evan said, "and place the wallet on the roof where I can see it." Harold reached back, feeling for the wallet. His stiff shoulder made the angle awkward. He twisted slightly to reach, and to Evan it looked like a turn toward him. Evan's flashlight shifted again. The beam cut across Harold's chest and face. For a brief instant, the scene looked unfamiliar to Evan, as if he were in a story he could not control. "Don't turn," Evan said, stepping closer. "I am not turning, sir," Harold said. "I am only—" Evan made a quick decision. He took Harold's wrist to move his hand back to the roof. The grip was firm and fast, and the motion in the rain became unbalanced. Harold's foot slipped on the curb. Evan tried to steady him, but the rush of the moment pushed them both. Evan's forearm came across Harold's shoulder to press him against the car. Harold's hand slid, his hip turned, and then, in a blink, Harold stumbled. His shoe lost hold, and he fell sideways. The curb met him hard. His head struck the edge with a dull sound that was small but clear under the rain. Everything went quiet in Evan's mind for a second. The radio still crackled. Cars still hissed by. Rain still fell. But inside him there was a small stunned pause. Then he moved. "Sir? Sir," he said, kneeling. "Stay with me." He keyed his radio and called for medical help, his voice tight and careful, giving the location twice. Harold did not answer. His eyes were closed, and his breath was slow. Water ran along the street and formed a thin stream near the curb. The paper bag with the lemon cake had fallen to the floor of the car and rested against the seat leg. The flashlight beam lay across the open door, lighting the footwell and a small patch of wet road. An older couple in a minivan pulled over and asked if they could help. Evan told them to stay back but to please call again for an ambulance in case the first call did not go through. He kept speaking to Harold, saying his name, telling him help was coming, asking him to stay awake. He thought about the training videos and the checklist for head injuries. He tried to keep his voice even. He wished he could take back the last 10 seconds, but time did not bend. The ambulance arrived fast. Paramedics stepped into the rain with quiet focus, gloves on, questions short and clear. They stabilized Harold's neck, checked his breathing, checked his pupils, and lifted him with care. Evan answered their questions with precise words: time of stop, reason for stop, what he saw, when Harold lost balance, how long he had been unresponsive. He forced himself to speak only facts. One paramedic looked up at him and said, not unkindly, "We've got him. Follow us to the hospital." As the ambulance doors closed, the street seemed larger. The rain had softened, and the sound of the engine rolled away toward the small Richfield hospital. Evan stood by the patrol car with water dripping from his sleeves. He looked at the curb. He looked at the roof of the car where Harold's prints were already washed thin by the rain. He looked at the tail light and saw the small dark circle where the bulb had burned out. It was a simple thing. He felt complicated and heavy in a way he had not expected when his shift started. At the hospital, bright lights filled the emergency entrance. Nurses moved with steady speed. They knew Harold by name. He was at the community center often, and some of them volunteered there too. The news began to travel in quiet lines: a man from the center, a veteran, an accident at a traffic stop, head injury, please keep him in your thoughts. The pastor, Reverend Lewis, heard within the hour and began to call church members for prayer. Lila arrived in a sweater thrown over a house dress, her keys trembling in her hand as she ran to the desk. A nurse met her with calm eyes and a gentle voice. "We're taking care of him," the nurse said. "You can sit here. A doctor will come speak to you soon." Lila nodded and sat but did not quite see the chair before she did. She held the paper bag with the lemon cake, which a neighbor had found in the car and brought in, and she pressed it to her chest like a small, strange pillow. A doctor explained things in clear phrases: head injury, swelling, medicine, time. They would do everything they could. It might be a long night and a longer wait. Lila listened and tried to hear through the rush in her head. She asked if she could see him. They said she could, but for only a minute at first. She walked down the quiet hall with the doctor, and the lights in the ceiling made white ovals on the polished floor. In the room, machines made soft, steady sounds. Harold lay still. His hands, which had lifted foldable chairs and poured coffee and guided younger men through paperwork, rested under a clean blanket. Lila took one of them and stroked the back of it with her thumb. "I am here," she said in a low voice. "I am here, Harold." On the visitor's chair, someone had placed a folded American flag, the one Harold kept at home from his service years. A church friend had brought it, thinking it might bring comfort. It sat like a quiet promise, blue field and white stars neat and sure, a reminder of years that had shaped him and of the patience he always carried. Outside the window, the rain eased to a mist. The town, small and human and imperfect, continued to move. In a few hours, people would wake to early messages and fragments of news. At that moment, though, the world felt like this one room with its careful light, one man breathing with help, one woman holding his hand, and hope waiting like a steady note that does not break. Morning came gray and soft, like the sky did not want to wake up. News did, though. Phones buzzed across Richfield with short messages that grew longer as they moved. A simple post from the police department went up first. It said there had been an incident during a traffic stop, that a resident was in the hospital, that the matter was under review. It used careful words. It did not say who struck whom. It did not say how it happened. It asked for patience. At the hospital, the coffee in the waiting room tasted thin, but the kindness was strong. Nurses who knew Harold from the community center spoke to Lila in steady tones. They explained each step without rushing. A younger nurse brought a blanket because the air vents ran cool. "He is stable," the doctor said, "but we need time." Time sounded like a big room you have to cross slowly. Lila nodded. She put her phone on silent and then changed her mind and turned the sound back on. Reverend Lewis arrived with two elders from the church. They did not ask questions first. They sat with Lila for a while. They prayed with simple words that fit in the small space between beeps and footsteps. When they finished, the Reverend asked if she wanted a few people outside to keep watch. "Only if they promise to be kind," Lila said. He smiled and said, "They will hold candles and keep quiet." He went to call others. Across town, Officer Evan Pike sat at a narrow desk with a thick policy binder at his elbow. He opened his laptop and stared at the blank report form. He knew the sections by heart: reason for stop, officer actions, subject actions, use of force, medical aid. He began to type. His fingers chose formal phrases he had memorized in training. His mind did not sit still. He kept seeing the second when the flashlight beam slid, the shoe slipped, the curb rose up, and the sound came. He paused, swallowed, and kept typing. His supervisor stepped into the doorway and knocked on the frame. "Take your time, Evan," she said. "Stick to facts. No media comments. Union rep is available if you need one." Her voice was calm, not cold. She had been through long nights too. Evan nodded. He wanted to ask 100 questions about whether the body camera angle would help, whether the weather would be a factor, whether the report would be enough. Instead, he said, "Yes, Sergeant," and looked back at the screen. At Esther's diner, the bell over the door kept singing its soft notes. Fried eggs hissed. Coffee poured. People talked in voices that tried to be normal. Esther moved with practical grace behind the counter, refilling cups, sliding plates, remembering who liked jam and who liked honey. She kept glimpsing the small security monitor in the corner. One of her outdoor cameras faced the intersection down the block. She had placed it there years ago after a rash of car break-ins. It recorded night and day, rain and sun. She had seen the flashing lights the night before, but she had not watched the clip yet. It felt heavy to do it. Harold had come in for pancakes on Tuesdays, always leaving a generous tip and a kind word. Some officers came in too, sitting at the far booth, laughing softly over late meals. Esther did not like sides. She liked people. But the camera did not care about likes. It just saw. Between orders, she wiped her hands, took a breath, and told herself she would view the footage after the morning rush. A few blocks away, a young reporter named Tessa parked her small hatchback near the city building. She had a notepad, a voice recorder, and a careful way with strangers. She wrote for the local paper and kept its online page tidy and clear. Her first post that morning carried only verified information: the department's statement, the hospital's permission to say that a resident was in critical care, and a request for witnesses to contact her with any details. She used no bright words. She used only what she could stand behind. By mid-morning, a small group gathered outside the hospital. They did not chant. They did not make signs. They held small tea lights in clear cups because the wind was gentle but not still. Reverend Lewis thanked them for coming and asked them to keep the space quiet for patients and families. He spoke of Harold as a neighbor who had served his country and served his town, a quiet man who fixed broken chair legs at the center without being asked, who walked kids to the bus stop when it was still dark in winter. Inside, Lila finally texted their son. She had waited because she knew he worked far from Ridgefield and because she always tried not to alarm him. But the words would not be held back any longer. She wrote, "Dad is in the hospital. Head injury. Please call." The three dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. A minute later, the phone rang. She stepped into the hallway to answer. Her voice was steady until she said his name, then it shook once. He listened and asked short, clear questions. "I'm coming," he said. "I'll drive now." Back at the station, Evan finished his report and sent it. He sat still for a moment. The room hummed with low voices and printer sounds. His phone buzzed with messages he could not answer. He felt like he was underwater, hearing the world from a distance. He went to the locker room to breathe and found that everyone there avoided looking at him too long. Not cruelly. Carefully. As if eyes might make things worse. The union rep texted him again, Remember your rights. We will go step by step. Evan stared at the words until they blurred. Tessa reached the hospital and asked the front desk if there was a family member willing to speak, even briefly. She did not push. When the answer was not now, she left a card with her number and a gentle note, "I will listen. No rush." She walked past the candles and spoke to Reverend Lewis, who knew her from school programs she had covered. He told her what he could: Harold's kindness, his mentoring, his patience with anyone who was having a hard day. He did not speak about the stop except to say, "Truth will help us." Rumors began anyway. They always do. Someone said the state might send investigators. Someone else said a federal office had called. Someone whispered that a big city attorney was on a plane. Someone corrected that and said it was a train. Posts grew legs and ran through town. Most people wished for the right thing, a fair look at what happened, care for the family, a wise response from leaders. A few posts were sharp. Friends replied with cooler words and asked for calm. The mayor quietly called the police chief and then the hospital to check on two things: safety and transparency. Esther finally closed the register drawer after the lunch wave and locked the front door for a 20-minute break. She went to the small office in the back, where a stack of old cookbooks sat beside a tin of loose tea and a shoebox of extra keys. The camera system hummed quietly. She clicked the date and scrolled to the time of the stop. The screen brightened. Rain filled the frame like static. Then the shapes came into view: Harold's car pulled to the shoulder, the patrol car behind it, the flashlight beam moving, the door opening. She watched without blinking. It was not a movie. It was a record, flat, simple, and true. She saw hands, slow and careful. She saw positions on the curb. She saw a moment where a step slipped. She leaned forward until her forehead nearly touched the screen. She did not speak. When the ambulance lights washed the frame, she stopped the clip and sat back. She thought about plates she had served, kind words she had heard, and the way rain makes everything shine and hide at the same time. Her thumb hovered over the delete option for half a second. Not because she wanted to erase it, but because she wanted to do nothing at all: no conflict, no attention, no trouble. Then she shook her head at herself, almost laughing at the idea. She clicked the button to copy the file to an external card. The machine Word. She slid open a desk drawer and took out a small, clean envelope she used for cash tips that needed counting. She wrote the date on it in careful block letters. At City Hall, the mayor and the police chief held a short, closed-door conversation. They agreed to call in an outside review, not as an admission, but as a promise. People need to believe the process, the mayor said. And we need to believe it too. The chief nodded. He had officers to think about and a family at the hospital to respect. He released a second, slightly longer public note. It asked witnesses to share any video with the state review team. It said the department would cooperate fully. It said patience again. Tessa read the update and drove to the diner because someone in the hospital lobby had said, "Ask Esther." She did not push her way in. She waited outside until the brake sign flipped to open. Esther saw her through the glass and decided before the bell rang. "I have something," she told Tessa. "But it goes to the right place first." Tessa nodded at once. "Yes. The state review." Esther liked the answer. She poured Tessa a coffee on the house and slid a napkin across with a number for the investigator printed from the statement. "Use this," she said. Back at the hospital, the doctor explained to Lila what watch and wait meant hour by hour. They would keep swelling down. They would protect breathing. They would measure small signs that the body gives when it is trying to heal. "We will tell you what we see," the doctor promised. "No surprises. No sudden decisions without you." Lila thanked her. She put the paper cup of tea down and finally let herself cry, quiet and short, the way a person cries when they still want to hear every sound in a room. Evan left the station at dusk and sat in his car without starting it. The steering wheel felt colder than it should. He thought about driving to the hospital to ask about Harold, but he knew that would not be proper, not now, not without permission. He looked at the small notebook he kept in the console, the one where he wrote reminders like call mom Wednesday and pick up dry cleaning. He opened to a blank page and wrote 3 words, tell the truth. He did not know yet how he would do it. He just knew he must. Evening folded over the town. The candles outside the hospital glowed like soft stars, held in careful hands. Children stood beside parents. A few nurses came out on their break and stood at the edge of the group without saying anything. The air was quiet except for the low hum of traffic and the faint call of a train somewhere far away. It felt like the town was holding its breath but also holding each other. In the back office of the diner, Esther slid the small memory card into the envelope and sealed it with her thumb. She looked at the clean white paper and the date written in tidy lines. She did not feel heroic. She felt responsible. She walked to the front, turned the sign to closed for the evening, and slipped the envelope into her purse, right beside her keys. Before she turned off the office light, she touched the edge of the desk and said in a voice just above a whisper, "Let the truth speak." Then she picked up her coat and went to do exactly that. Dawn broke pale and quiet. The rain had stopped, and the town felt washed and thin, like a page with most of the ink lifted away. In the hospital, the night nurse gave Lila a simple update. Harold's numbers were steady. The medicine was doing its job. It was not a promise, but it was not a loss either. Lila stood by the window for a moment and watched a pink streak in the sky. She pressed her fingers to the warm paper cup and whispered a thank you that was only for the morning itself. Then she went back to Harold's side and smoothed the blanket near his hand. At the station, Officer Evan Pike placed his uniform cap in his locker and closed the door with care. He had slept for only an hour, and that hour had not been kind. He kept seeing the curb. He kept hearing the dull sound that rain could not hide. His supervisor met him in a small office with a table that wobbled. The union representative joined by phone. They reviewed the steps that would come next: internal questions, outside review, no public comments, keep records clear. None of the words changed the simple ache in Evan's chest. He had chosen to serve, and now he was afraid he had harmed a man who had harmed no one. The town woke with a mix of caution and kindness. People held doors for each other as if the hinges were fragile. At Esther's diner, the bell chimed as early customers came in for eggs and toast. Esther moved through the room with steady hands and quiet eyes. In her purse, the envelope with the memory card rested beside her keys. Each time her hand touched the purse, she felt both the weight and the relief of having made a choice. She had not watched the video again. Once was enough. Truth did not need a replay to exist. A few minutes after 6, a man in a plain jacket and a cap came in and chose the seat at the end of the counter. He took off his cap and placed it on his knee. When Esther poured him coffee, he said thank you in a voice that was gentle but firm, like someone used to speaking carefully. He did not look around much. He watched the steam rise and then took a sip. Esther kept working but took note of him, the way he listened more than he moved. She had seen that kind of calm in teachers, nurses, and a few people who showed up when bad things happened. The man finished half the cup before he spoke again. I heard there was trouble at the intersection last night, he said. I am sorry for everyone. He did not push. He did not ask for details. He let the words rest. Esther's hands paused over the sugar caddy. She looked at him. There was, she said. It touched people I care about. The man nodded. May I ask about Harold, he said softly. He is a good man. Esther studied his face. She saw worry. She saw a steady kind of strength under it. His wife is at the hospital, she said. Folks are praying. He set his cup down. "I am Malik," he said, as if he had decided it was time to name himself. "Harold is my father." The room seemed to get a little quieter, though the plate still clinked and the door still chimed. Esther felt her eyes burn, and she blinked away the heat. "I am so sorry," she said. "I have something that the state should see. It may help. I plan to take it to them this morning." Malik did not leap at her words. He did not reach for the purse. He said, "Thank you for thinking of the right place first. Chain of custody matters. I can call the investigator to meet you here, if that makes it easier." Esther nodded slowly. "That would be good," she said. "I like doing things in daylight." Malik stepped outside to make calls. He kept his voice calm and short, using names and times in neat lines. He asked one colleague, a medical specialist he trusted, to review the hospital's updates and to be ready to advise if the family needed guidance on care. He asked another to start a simple file for facts only: names, times, weather, policy sections, any past training programs. "No speeches," he said. "No noise. We work with respect." He did not call a national show. He did not draft a speech. He called the state investigator and said, "A witness has material and is ready to share." When he came back inside, he ordered toast and ate it without tasting much. He asked Esther about her day as if asking gave her back some normal ground to stand on. She told him about the regulars, the stack of old cookbooks in her office, the way pancakes always sold better when the weather was bad. It was a kind conversation holding a serious center they did not name. When the bell over the door rang again, Tessa the reporter walked in, saw Esther with a stranger, and paused. Esther waved her over. "This is Malik," she said. "He is Harold's son." Tessa's face shifted from professional to human in a breath. "I am very sorry," she said, and did not hold out her recorder. Malik thanked her for careful reporting. He said he had read the short post, and he appreciated that it named only what could be verified. Tessa nodded. "I try to do no harm," she said. Malik replied, "That is a good rule for all of us." He did not tell her everything. He did not hide either. He said, "There may be video. It will go to the state. When the time is right, facts will come out." Tessa said, "I understand." She offered to share contact details for people who had been kind to Harold at the center, so the paper could publish a profile that honored who he was without stirring argument. Malik liked that. "Stories help towns remember themselves," he said. At the hospital, the morning doctor spoke to Lila in simple sentences. They had adjusted medicine. They were watching for small signs of response. They were ready for the long work of healing. There was no clock for this, only steps. Lila listened with both ears and both hands, one on her notebook, one on the side rail of the bed. When she finished writing, she leaned close to Harold and told him the basics. Morning came. "People are kind. I am here." Then she sat upright and breathed the way her choir director once taught her to do before a difficult song. Online, the town talked. Some posts were rough around the edges, but most people tried to be fair. A few wrote hard claims without proof, and others answered with "let's wait for facts." The mayor posted a short note calling for calm and saying the town had asked the state for a thorough review. He reminded everyone that the hospital needed quiet and that the staff was working hard. He asked people to be gentle with each other. He kept comments on. He and his staff removed only the few that crossed lines. Under the note, someone shared a photo of Harold picking up trash at a park with kids from the center. The picture did a better job than any speech. Around mid-morning, the state investigator arrived at the diner. She was a practical woman in a neat blazer with a badge and a soft voice. She sat with Esther and Malik at the corner booth. Esther placed the envelope on the table with both hands, like she was handing over a small live thing. The investigator thanked her, logged the handoff in a clear form, sealed the envelope again, and told Esther she had done the right thing. "Truth needs careful hands," the investigator said. "Thank you for yours." Esther nodded and took a long breath she had been holding without knowing it. Malik asked about next steps. The investigator explained: intake, secure storage, review by a small team, compare with other sources. "We do this without hurry," she said, "but we do not drift." When the meeting ended, Esther finally let herself sit still. Malik paid for his toast and left a tip that was generous but not showy. Tessa stepped outside and called the paper. She proposed a piece that focused on Harold's service, his mentoring, and the community response, not on anger. Her editor agreed. "Right, human," he said. "Keep it clean." She smiled. She knew how to do that. She began by describing the Tuesday pancakes and the quiet way Harold waited for the young veteran who always arrived 5 minutes late. Evan, still at the station, received the word that an outside investigator had accepted a piece of video evidence. He closed his eyes for a second and felt a strange mix of worry and relief. If the video showed what he remembered and feared, then at least the facts would have a clear shape. He asked his supervisor for guidance and was told again to wait for the process. He went to the gym and lifted light weights to move the tightness out of his shoulders. It did not leave, but it shifted. He told himself again to tell the truth when asked. He wrote the 3 words on a card and placed it in his pocket like a small anchor. By noon, Malik had spoken with the hospital's patient advocate, the nurse manager on the floor, and the billing office. He did not demand special things. He asked for clarity. He asked for copies. He asked for a written plan and a schedule of updates that Lila could count on. The staff met him with the same calm they had given to every family in the wing. "We will keep you informed," the nurse manager promised. "You do not have to guess." Malik thanked her. Then he found a quiet corner, called his colleagues, and said, "The hospital is doing right by the book. Let's support them and not make noise." Word of his arrival began to spread, but it moved slower than rumor. Some people said the son is here. Others said he seems steady. A few who recognized his name from news elsewhere kept it to themselves for the moment because they saw how he moved: no cameras, no crowd, just steps. In the afternoon, he walked from the hospital to the church 2 blocks away where the doors were open. He sat in a back pew for a few minutes and listened to the creaks of an old building and the far-off sound of traffic. He did not pray with many words. He let the quiet hold him up. The mayor and the police chief met again and agreed to host a press update the next day. They would share only what they could share and would not fill gaps with guesses. They both knew that people fear silence, but they also knew that rushing words can break trust. The chief spoke to his officers about patience and mental health. "This is hard," he told them. "Ask for help if you need it. Do not argue online. Care for each other. Care for the town." He did not give a speech about heroes. He gave a reminder about duty. Late in the day, Malik returned to Esther's diner. He did not plan to eat, he planned to thank her again. But she insisted on making him a sandwich to go. "You will need food later," she said. He accepted because sometimes saying no makes things harder. As he waited, a teen from the community center came in with a sketchbook. He recognized Malik from a photo on a wall of mentors who left and still send letters. The teen did not ask for a selfie. He asked if he could draw a get well card for Harold and bring it to the hospital. Malik smiled. "He will like that," he said. "He always liked your drawings." Evening settled with a soft blue light, and the candles outside the hospital glowed again. The crowd was a little bigger than the night before, but the quiet was the same. A guitar played a simple tune that did not ask anyone to sing. In the hallway, Tessa taped a note to the bulletin board: "If you want to share a memory for Harold's story, write it here." Pens appeared from pockets. Short lines gathered like small birds, he helped me get my first job. He fixed my fence. He told me to keep going when I wanted to quit school. He always said hello. Malik stood just inside the doorway of Harold's room and watched the machines with their gentle lights. He had learned to read those lights over the years visiting clients and friends. He approached the bed slowly and took his father's hand. The skin was warm and familiar. The edges of the room seemed to soften. He told Harold the facts again in a calm voice, the way a careful person reads a map before a long walk. The town is steady, he said. Good people are helping. The truth is moving with careful feet. We will not rush, but we will not stop. He leaned closer. I know what to do, he said. I will do it the right way. He did not promise victory. He promised effort. He did not speak about news shows or big stages. He spoke about documents and doctors and simple people in a small town who had chosen decency when it would have been easier to avoid notice. He squeezed Harold's hand and felt the weight of the moment shift from fear to focus. Outside, the street lights came on one by one. In the diner, Esther stacked chairs on tables and wiped the floor in slow, even strokes. In the newsroom, Tessa typed the last line of her profile and closed her laptop with a small click. At the station, Evan sat alone and stared at the card in his pocket and then at the phone he had not used. In the church, the Reverend blew out the last candle and locked the door, leaving the room smelling faintly of wax and wood. Night gathered, and with it, something else gathered too, a sense that the threads were pulling tight, but not to break tight so that the real pattern could be seen. In the quiet of the hospital room, Malik stood, adjusted the blanket, and said the words he had carried all day in the simplest way he could. I am here, he told his father. I will do this the right way, Dad. Then he sat, took out his small notebook, and began to write down the next 3 steps. The next day began with the kind of clear light that makes every edge look sharp. The mayor's office set up a small stage in the community hall. Rows of folding chairs faced a simple podium with 2 flags behind it. Reporters placed tripods in the back and taped down cords with blue tape. The town clerk passed out a 1-page agenda: welcome, safety update from the hospital, note about the outside review, questions. It was not a show. It was a promise to speak in daylight. People came in quietly. Nurses in scrubs stood near the doors on their break. Church members sat together near the aisle. A few officers stood in uniform at the back wall, caps in hand, faces still. Tessa chose a seat in the second row with her notebook open and the recorder ready but not yet on. She watched the room the way a careful gardener watches weather, not afraid, but alert. Malik walked in with Lila and Reverend Lewis. He wore a plain jacket, the same one from the diner, and he kept a small notebook in his hand. He did not look for cameras. He looked for the exits, out of habit, and then for the chairs. He chose a seat near the front so that Lila would not have to weave through crowded rows if she needed to step out. He touched her hand and felt her squeeze back. She was strong, but the kind of strong that still hurts. The mayor opened the meeting with a simple greeting and a thank you to hospital staff, police, and neighbors for keeping calm. He said the town had requested a full outside review and would share updates when allowed. He did not use big words. He used careful ones. We want facts, he said. We want fairness. We will not rush, and we will not hide. He invited the police chief to speak. The chief stepped up. He was not a man of flourish. He held the sides of the podium and cleared his throat. We are cooperating with the state, he said. We have already sent body camera files, radio logs, and reports. We ask anyone with information to share it with the review team. Please do not spread unconfirmed claims. He paused. We care about Mr. Brooks. We care about this town. We will answer questions as we can. Hands went up. The first questions were basic: timing, training hours, whether the officer involved was on leave, he was, and whether there was any danger to public safety, there was not. The answers were measured. Then Tessa stood and asked the question she had carried all morning. "Chief," she said, "has the department received civilian video from the intersection camera at Pine and Cedar? And if so, has it been turned over to the state?" The room held still. The chief met her eyes. He did not look away. "I cannot comment on specific evidence in an active review," he said. "I can say all relevant material will go to the state, and we will not keep anything back." He let those words settle. He knew they would be printed and replayed. He chose them on purpose. A murmur moved through the chairs like a low wind in leaves. Malik felt the moment arrive, the one he had prepared for in the quiet of the church the day before. He stood. He did not step to the podium yet. He simply turned to face the room and lifted his voice enough to carry. "Good morning," he said. "My name is Malik Brooks. The man in the hospital is my father." You could feel the air change, not loud, but deep. People leaned in, not out. Tessa clicked her recorder on. The chief's jaw tightened and then eased. Lila kept her eyes on her lap for one breath, then lifted them. Malik continued in a steady tone. "I am here as a son first," he said. "I am also a civil rights attorney who has represented veterans and families in use of force cases. I am not here to perform. I am here to make sure we walk in the light." He lifted the small notebook. "Yesterday morning, a neighbor, Esther from the diner, did what strong neighbors do. She gave a copy of her security video to the state investigator. That was right. That was careful. We are grateful." He did not raise his voice. He did not dramatize. He laid out steps like stones across a stream. "We have asked the state to preserve that video, compare it with the body camera files, and tell the truth with full context. We have also asked for an independent medical review so that my father's care remains the only priority at the hospital. We support peaceful assembly. We do not support harm to people or places. Please keep your voices kind and your hands open." Someone called out, "What does the video show?" It came from the back, a voice tight with worry, not anger. Malik answered with respect. "I have not posted it. I have not shared it online. That is not how we do careful work. I will say this, it shows my father moving slowly, with his hands visible, and a strike that looks unjustified to me. But my opinion is not the point. The process is. The state will speak in due time. Until then, please hold steady." The chief surprised a few people by nodding. "Thank you," he said into the microphone. "We will cooperate fully with the state review, including any request for additional training or policy changes that may come from it." It was not a surrender. It was an agreement to walk the same road. A few more questions followed about de-escalation training, about night shift support, about how the town could help the hospital. Malik answered only the ones that touched his family directly. He did not crowd the chief. He did not challenge the mayor. He kept his circle small and clear: patient care, evidence integrity, peaceful conduct, policy improvement. When the questions ended, Reverend Lewis asked to close with a short appeal. The mayor agreed. The Reverend stepped up and said, "We will not let rumor be our teacher. We will let truth be our guide. We will hold each other up." After the meeting, the hallway filled with small conversations. Nurses hugged Lila. Neighbors touched Malik's elbow and said they were praying. The chief approached Malik and spoke quietly. "When the state asks to interview your family," he said, "we will make space for privacy." Malik thanked him. It was a simple kindness that mattered. Outside, sunlight fell across the steps. Tessa caught up with Malik and asked for a brief on-record comment to add to her story. He said, "Please write that our town has chosen patience over noise. Write that we believe in facts. She said she would. She also asked Lila if she could include a small detail about Harold's lemon cake waiting on the table that night. Lila smiled through tired eyes. Yes, she said. He would like that. While people were still talking on the steps, the state investigator released a short public note. Evidence had been received from a civilian camera, it would be secured and analyzed with other material, no further details would be shared until the first review pass was complete. The note was dry on purpose. Dry words do not catch fire. In living rooms and at lunch counters, the town watched the press clip on their phones. It showed Malik's calm, Lila's quiet strength, the chief's straight shoulders, and the Reverend's steady voice. Comments under the clip were more careful than before. A few thanked Esther by name even though she had not been on camera. Someone left flowers by the diner door with a note that said, "Truth has friends." At the station, Evan watched the clip alone in a small break room. He turned the sound low and fixed his eyes on Malik's face. He did not feel attacked. He felt seen. The 3 words in his pocket "tell the truth" burned a little hotter. He stood, walked down the hall, and knocked on his supervisor's door. "Ma'am," he said, voice level but tight, "I would like to make a supplemental statement. I want to correct my report where fear made it too neat." She studied him for a long second. She was not surprised. She had seen the weight he carried. "We can arrange that," she said. "You have a right to counsel. The state will want to be present." He nodded. "I understand," he said. "I want to do this right." She made the calls. He sat in an empty conference room and drank water from a paper cup and looked up at the ceiling tiles as if they could steady him. He thought about training, about the way stress can shrink a person's vision until it is only the size of a circle of light. He promised himself he would say that out loud when asked. Across town, Esther tried to keep her day ordinary. She cracked eggs. She rang up checks. She handed a turkey sandwich to a man who came in every Wednesday at noon. But kindness kept finding her. People pressed her hands. Someone slipped a "thank you" note into the tip jar. She felt shy about it and a little uncomfortable, but she also felt relieved. Courage is lighter when shared. During her break, she stepped outside and looked up at the clear sky, so different from the rain that had hidden things 2 nights ago. She whispered another small line to herself, "Daylight is good." Tessa filed her piece with care. She chose verbs that did not shout. She wrote about Harold the neighbor, not just Harold the headline. She wrote about a town that kept its voice low so that the truth could be heard. Her editor placed the story at the top of the page with a simple title, "Ridgefield asks for facts, stands with family." The photo showed candles at twilight, not anger. It felt right. By late afternoon, the hospital shared a small update. Harold's condition remained serious but stable. The doctor explained what that meant in clear lines, then returned to the work of care. Lila read the update twice and read it again to Malik, though he had already seen it. "We keep walking," he said. "Step by step." The mayor announced that the council would consider funding additional de-escalation training and a veteran-aware stop protocol at the next meeting. He invited public comment in writing so that nurses, officers, and busy parents could add thoughts without standing for hours at a microphone. "We will move with respect," his note said. "We will not wait for perfect to start better." When dusk came, the hallways at the station were quiet except for the hum of vending machines. Evan returned for his appointment with the internal and state investigators. He sat at a long table with a recorder in the center and his union rep at his side. He folded his hands, unfolded them, and then held them still. The state investigator turned on the device and read the date and time into the microphone. "Officer Pike," she said, "we're here to take a supplemental statement. Do you understand your rights and the purpose of this interview?" He said yes. Then he began. He spoke without decoration. He said he had been tense from earlier calls. He said the rain and radio chatter narrowed his attention. He said he issued commands too fast. He described losing sight of Harold's hands for a heartbeat when the flashlight beam moved and how fear pushed him into a grip that turned into a hold. He said Harold slipped. He said he should have stepped back and slowed down. He did not hide behind the weather or the curb. He said, I made choices that were not careful enough for a man who was being careful with me. When it was over, he felt both empty and less heavy. He walked out into the evening and looked at the first stars coming out above the dark line of the trees. He did not think about headlines. He thought about Harold in a hospital bed and a son who had asked a whole town to choose care before noise. Back at the hospital, Malik stood again by Harold's side. The room was dim except for the gentle lights of the machines. He told his father what had happened that day in short, steady lines: the meeting, the calm in the room, the chief's promise, the town's quiet, the investigator's note, the plan for training, and one more thing he had learned in the last hour that the officer had asked to give a fuller statement. We are moving toward truth, he said. Not fast. Not slow. Just right. Outside, the candles glowed for a third night. There were more of them now, but the same soft quiet wrapped the crowd. A small child asked his mother why everyone was whispering. She said, so we can hear the important things. In a window across the street, Esther turned the diner sign to closed, then stood for a moment with her hand on the switch, feeling grateful for a town that could hold both grief and grace. The day ended not with shouting, but with steps. The press clip finished playing on phones and sat there, still. The story would go on. The work would go on. And in that work, the town had already made its choice. It had chosen to let the light in. The weeks that followed felt long but steady, like a road that has both sharp stones and patches of smooth ground. Each day brought a new step toward answers. The state investigators finished their first review. They announced that charges would be filed against Officer Evan Pike for excessive force causing serious injury. The words were plain, but they carried weight. People in Ridgefield read them carefully. Some felt relief, others felt sorrow, but most agreed that accountability mattered. At the courthouse, reporters stood outside with cameras, but inside the tone was quiet. Evan arrived with his lawyer and union representative. His shoulders looked smaller than before, like a man who had carried too much weight. When asked to enter his plea, he spoke clearly, guilty. It was not shouted. It was not hidden. It was said like a man stepping forward into truth. His lawyer explained that Evan had chosen a plea agreement in order to avoid a long trial and to accept responsibility. Malik stood with Lila in the courtroom. He wore a dark suit, but his notebook was still in his hand. He did not glare at Evan. He did not turn away either. When the judge asked if the family wanted to speak, Malik rose. His voice was steady but not cold. Your Honor, my father is still recovering. His life has changed, and so has ours. But we do not ask for cruelty. We ask for accountability and for change that protects others. He turned his head slightly and met Evan's eyes. Tell the truth, he said, repeating the words he had carried for weeks. The judge listened, then handed down a sentence that included a fine, probation, and a requirement: Evan must speak to every new cadet class at the academy about fear, bias, and choices. It was unusual, but it was designed to teach. Evan nodded. I will, he said, his voice low but firm. The judge closed the session. News outlets wanted long interviews with Malik, but he declined most of them. He told reporters outside the courthouse, this is not about me. This is about systems. This is about care, about training, and about respect. My father taught me to serve with patience. That is what we must build. Then he stepped into the sunlight with his mother and walked away. At the hospital, after many long days, a moment came that the staff had hoped for. Harold opened his eyes. At first, the movement was small, a flutter like a leaf in wind. Then he looked at Lila and squeezed her hand. Tears ran down her face, and she pressed her forehead to his. Nurses cheered quietly in the hallway when they heard. The doctor explained that the road would still be long: rehabilitation, therapy, rest, but waking up was a strong sign. When Malik visited that evening, Harold was sitting up in the bed with pillows behind him. Machines still hummed, but his eyes were clear. Malik sat beside him and told him the story in careful pieces: the stop, the vigil, the video, the meetings, the court. Harold listened, nodded slowly, and then whispered, "Proud." It was only one word, but it was enough to bring Malik's throat tight with emotion. The city council held its promised meeting. People filled the room and left written comments. Some asked for better de-escalation training. Others wanted more officers to know how to handle stops with elderly or disabled drivers. Veterans asked for protocols that recognized service injuries. Teachers asked for community programs that taught young people about their rights. In the end, the council voted to fund a program in Harold's name. It would train officers on slowing down, on speaking clearly, on recognizing when a person's body moved differently because of age or injury. The program also created a board of citizens to review complaints and advise on policy. At Esther's diner, life went on, but with new warmth. Customers often thanked her for her courage. She accepted the thanks with humility. "I just did what was right," she said, wiping counters and refilling cups. A small framed note now hung by the register: "Let the truth speak." She had written it in her own hand, and it reminded her that ordinary people can hold keys to justice. Tessa's article about Ridgefield spread beyond the town. Larger papers reprinted it because it told not just of conflict, but of community care. She wrote about Harold's lemon cake, the Tuesday pancakes, the children who drew cards. She wrote about neighbors choosing calm over noise. She wrote about accountability that was not about anger but about responsibility. For weeks, she received emails from readers saying her story gave them hope. Evan kept his promise. Months later, he stood in front of a room full of cadets. He did not speak as an expert. He spoke as a man who had made a mistake that harmed another man. "Fear can make you blind," he told them. "You must slow down. You must see the person in front of you as a human being, not a shadow in your mind. Mr. Brooks was careful with me. I was not careful with him. Do not repeat my mistake." The cadets listened. Some shifted uncomfortably. Some took notes. All of them remembered. Slowly, Harold regained more strength. He moved from hospital care to rehabilitation. Therapists taught him to walk again with careful steps in a quiet garden behind the rehab center. Malik visited often, sometimes reading policy drafts beside his father, sometimes just sitting in silence. One afternoon, as they walked slowly along the path, Harold looked at the folded American flag resting on his lap. He touched it with his fingers and said, "Still serving?" Malik smiled. "Yes, Dad. Still serving." The town of Ridgefield was not perfect, but it had grown. The program named after Harold became a model for other towns. Esther's Diner became a place where people knew that stories mattered. The church kept hosting vigils, not just for Harold but for other causes of care. The hospital staff used what they learned to help other families through hard nights. Malik continued his legal work, but with a new focus on practical reform. He turned down television contracts and book deals. Instead, he worked with towns like Ridgefield, helping them build small, steady changes. He told people, not every solution is grand. Some are simple. Some start with slowing down, listening, and telling the truth. On a clear autumn morning, months after the night of the stop, Harold stood in his own garden with Lila at his side. He leaned on a cane, but his eyes were strong. Neighbors gathered for a small ceremony. The mayor presented him with a certificate naming the new training program in his honor. Children from the center sang a simple song. Reverend Lewis said a prayer of thanks. Esther brought lemon cake. Tessa took notes but did not publish them that day. She said the memory was for the town first. Harold looked at the faces before him, his wife, his son, his neighbors, his church family, the officers standing in uniform but with softer eyes. He raised his hand slowly, and everyone grew quiet. "Respect," he said, his voice rough but clear. "Respect is not a gift. It is a duty. Give it first. Always." The crowd nodded. Some cried. Malik placed a hand on his father's shoulder. The folded flag rested on the porch rail, stars shining in the morning sun. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Harold sat with Lila and Malik on the porch. He breathed deep and let the cool air fill him. "We made it through," he said. Malik replied, "Yes, Dad. And now we keep going." The story of Ridgefield did not end there. It continued in the way officers approached cars with more patience, in the way neighbors trusted that truth could be found, in the way a diner became a place where courage lived in plain sight. It continued in the way a son honored his father not with revenge but with justice. And it continued in the way Harold, a quiet veteran who once carried chairs and poured coffee at a center, reminded everyone that dignity belongs to every person. The lesson was simple, but it was strong. You never know a person's story, or the people who will stand with them. Choose care before force, truth before pride, and respect before judgment. That was the gift Ridgefield carried forward step by steady step, into the future.